The town of Red Mesa woke under a hot and dusty sky. Wind rolled down from the desert hills and carried the smell of horses, old wood, and smoke. The main street was alive that morning, filled with wagons, talk, and boots kicking sand. A group of men had built a platform in front of the sheriff's office. People gathered there, curious and restless. No one knew quite what they were about to see until a wagon rolled in, its wheels creaking. 5 young Apache girls sat in the back. Their wrists were tied in front of them with rope, their clothes worn and dusty. They had been caught after a raid somewhere near the border. Now they were being brought to town for trade, as if they were something less than human. The crowd fell quiet when they saw the wagon stop. The man who brought them, a trader named Rusk, jumped down and dusted off his hat. He was a tall man with hard eyes. "Gather around," he shouted. "Got something rare here today." He spoke like he was proud. The girls sat still. They did not look at him or the people. Their eyes looked far away toward the desert hills that shimmered under the morning sun. Rusk climbed onto the platform and started talking loud about prices and buyers. But then something strange happened. The oldest girl, sitting in the middle, began to hum. Her voice was low, shaking at first, but then grew stronger. One by one, the other girls joined her until the air filled with a soft song that made everyone stop talking. It was a song in their own language, full of sadness and something stronger, hope. Even those who didn't understand the words could feel what it meant. It was like they were singing to the wind itself, asking it to carry their hearts home. The song rose and fell like a prayer, and the crowd that had come to watch began to fall silent. The laughter from the saloon across the street stopped too. Only the song filled the square now. Standing among the people was a quiet man named Eli Carter. He was a rancher from a small place near the river, a man known for keeping to himself. He had come to town only to buy nails, seed, and feed for his horses. He had no reason to be there longer than a few minutes. But when he heard the girls singing, something inside him froze. The sound touched a part of him that words couldn't reach. He remembered his younger days working near Apache herders and learning some of their songs. Those memories came back like wind over old ashes, stirring something long forgotten. The way they sang now, the pain and the courage, it was too much to watch. His hands clenched at his sides as Rusk kept talking, waving a ledger, trying to get someone to start bidding. But no one did. The song had changed everything. Rusk grew angry. "Come on, folks. Who'll make the first offer? Strong girls, good workers." His voice sounded rough against the song. When no one spoke, he slammed his ledger shut and kicked the platform. The sudden noise made one of the girls flinch, but she kept singing. That was when Eli moved. He stepped forward through the crowd, his boots slow on the dusty ground. Everyone turned to look at him. His hat cast a shadow over his eyes, but his jaw was tight, his face pale. He stopped near the platform and said in a calm voice that carried across the square, "Stop." The crowd went still again. Even the girls stopped singing, their eyes turning toward him. "I'll buy them," Eli said. "All of them." The words fell like stones into the quiet. People started to whisper. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but Eli didn't smile. He looked up at Rusk, who frowned in disbelief. "You can't buy 'em all, mister," Rusk said, spitting to the side. "That's not how this works." "It works however I say it works," Eli said. He reached into his coat, pulled out a leather pouch, and threw it onto the platform. The coins inside clinked loud in the silence. "That's every dollar I got. Count it." Rusk bent down, opened the pouch, and his eyes widened a little. It was a lot of money, too much for what he had expected. "You serious?" he asked. "I said stop," Eli repeated quietly. "And I said I'll buy them." The sheriff stepped out of his office. He had heard everything. He looked at Eli for a long time, then at the girls. Finally, he sighed and nodded. "If the man's paying, it's legal," he said. Rusk grinned again, though his grin looked more nervous this time. He took the pouch and counted fast. "Fine," he said. "They're yours." Eli climbed onto the platform. He pulled out a knife, not a weapon, but the one he used to cut rope on his ranch, and walked toward the girls. The crowd watched as he carefully cut their bindings one by one. The girls stared at him, unsure if they were being freed or just handed to someone new. When the last rope fell away, the oldest girl rubbed her wrists and whispered something in her language. Eli couldn't understand it, but her voice no longer shook. He nodded once and said softly, "You're safe now." The sun was high when Eli led them away from the square. The crowd stepped aside to make a path. No one said anything. Even Rusk didn't try to stop them. The only sound was the steady creak of the wagon wheels as Eli helped the girls climb in and took the reins. As they rolled out of town, one of the girls began to sing again, softly this time, a different song, one that sounded gentler, lighter. Eli didn't know what it meant, but it felt like a thank you. He looked out at the red desert ahead and knew his life was about to change forever. The wind rose as the wagon moved down the trail toward the open plains. Behind them, the town shrank into dust and distance. Ahead lay the long road to his ranch, the quiet river, and the endless sky. The song of the 5 girls followed them all the way, winding through the desert air, turning sorrow into something close to hope. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Eli Carter felt like he was riding toward something good, something right. The sound of their voices filled the spaces in his heart that the lonely years had carved out. The world around him seemed softer somehow, the horizon less cruel. By the time the sun began to set, the wagon had vanished into the golden dust. Carrying 1 man and 5 freed souls toward a new beginning no one in Red Mesa would ever forget. The long trail back to Eli Carter's ranch was quiet except for the creak of wagon wheels and the faint hum of the girls' song. The sun dipped low, painting the sky red and gold. Eli drove steady, glancing at them now and then. They sat close together in the back, wrapped in old blankets he had given them. They didn't speak much, but their eyes were no longer full of fear, only watchfulness, like wild animals trying to understand if the man leading them was friend or foe. When they reached the ranch after nightfall, Eli lit the lantern and helped them down one by one. The horses were tired, and so was he, but he didn't show it. The ranch stood wide and quiet under the stars, 1 small cabin, a barn, and a few fences stretching toward the river. Coyotes howled in the distance, and the girls looked around carefully, taking in every sound. Eli opened the barn doors and pointed inside. "You can rest here tonight," he said softly. "It's safe. No one will hurt you." They didn't answer, but they stepped inside slowly. He laid out hay, blankets, and a jug of water. He left bread and fruit on a small table. Before walking away, he looked back once. The oldest girl was watching him, her dark eyes steady. She didn't speak, but she nodded slightly. It was a small thing, yet it felt like the beginning of trust. In the morning, Eli started his chores early. The girls came out of the barn quietly, their faces tired but calm. He didn't tell them what to do. He just worked as usual, feeding the horses, fixing the fence, chopping wood. After a while, 2 of the girls began helping without being asked. One carried the water bucket. Another gathered small sticks for fire. He thanked them, using slow, careful words. They smiled a little, though shyly. Days turned into weeks. The girls learned small things around the ranch. How to light the stove, how to feed the animals, how to use the wash basin. Eli tried to teach them English words, and they taught him a few from their own language. The youngest, Tessa, laughed the most, even though she barely spoke. The oldest, Nietzsche, stayed quiet but watched everything. She seemed to be their leader, making sure none of them were treated wrongly. Eli respected that. At night, the girls often sang together beside the fire. Their voices rose into the cool desert air, filling the ranch with something peaceful. Eli would sit on the porch, listening while sharpening tools or mending his boots. The songs made the place feel alive again. For years, his ranch had been silent since his family passed away, but now it sounded like home again. One evening, rain clouds rolled in from the mountains. Thunder growled far away. Eli was closing the barn doors when Nietzsche came running, pointing at the sky. She spoke quickly in her language, worried about the animals. He smiled and nodded. "It's all right," he said, but she grabbed a rope and helped him tie down the hay anyway. When the rain came, it poured hard. The girls huddled near the stove, laughing at the thunder like children. Eli brought out his old blanket and covered their shoulders. It was a small thing, but they smiled, and one of them handed him a piece of bread as thanks. After that storm, things changed between them. They started trusting him more. Nietzsche helped with the horses each morning. Another girl learned to make soup in the pot. The youngest began following Eli everywhere, helping feed the chickens and asking questions with gestures and laughter. The language didn't matter much anymore. Kindness did. Months passed. The ranch grew busier, brighter. Neighbors who had heard rumors about Eli's decision began visiting. Some came out of curiosity, others with sharp words. "You're wasting your money, Carter," one rancher said. "You'll get yourself in trouble keeping them here." Eli just answered calmly, "They're free now." They stay because they want to. That was all he said, and people soon learned not to question him. The sheriff rode out once to check things himself. When he arrived, he found the girls laughing near the river, washing clothes while Eli fixed a broken gate. The sheriff nodded, satisfied. "They look safe," he said. "Keep it that way." Eli nodded, and that was the end of it. As seasons turned, the 5 girls became part of the ranch's rhythm. They worked, sang, and cared for the land. Eli built a small cabin for them near the cottonwood trees, so they could have their own space. When he finished the last board, the girls decorated it with painted stones and feathers. They called it their home by the river. One evening near harvest time, they invited Eli to sit by the fire with them. They sang a new song that night, one softer, full of warmth. When they finished, Nietzsche looked at him and said slowly in broken English, "You give us life again." Her voice trembled, but she smiled. Eli looked into the fire and said quietly, "You gave it back to me too." Years went by, and the ranch became known for something rare. Travelers passing through the valley often stopped to listen to the singing by the river. People called it the Ranch of Freedom. No one forgot how it started, the day a quiet man had stopped an auction and changed 6 lives. Eli grew older, his hair turning gray, but he kept working the land. The girls became women, strong and proud. They stayed close, helping him as family. When strangers asked about their story, Nietzsche would only say, "Once we were lost." Then one man said stop, and everything changed. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Eli would sit outside and hear their voices drifting through the air, the same song from the day he first saw them. The desert wind carried it softly across the hills, blending with the sound of the river. It reminded him that goodness didn't always come from power or wealth. Sometimes it came from one simple choice made in a single moment. When the years finally took him, the 5 women buried him under the cottonwood trees, near the cabin he built for them. They placed his old hat on the stone and sang the same song he had heard that first morning in Red Mesa, the song that had made him stop. Their voices rose clear and strong against the empty sky, not as captives, but as free women who would never forget the man who gave them back their voices. Long after that, travelers who passed near the river still claimed to hear music in the wind. Some said it was only the trees. Others swore it was the song of the 5 Apache sisters, singing under the stars for the man who had listened. And every now and then, when the night was still and the air was right, the faint echo of a man's voice seemed to join them, steady, kind, and calm, saying the same words that had changed everything.